Hey there everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Night Builds series. In this video we're going to be going through the 3 skills Sunder, Reflect and Royal Blade. Now this is the last video of this style. The next video in this series is going to be talking about the builds, and then the video after that is going to be talking about Skuruns. Now the builds video is they're both long presentations going through stuff, not showing gameplay. The builds video is going to be showing how to put skill points into the different skills as you develop, creating various setups, combinations of skills, how you create damage output using these skills together, how you create defense using these skills together, that kind of stuff. Actually, how to play the class. Because in here, I'm kind of more just detailing the skills themselves. So anyway, just saying before I go into the bulk of this video. So these skills are all advanced skills, which means they work much better if you put 99 points in them. It also means they kind of cost quite a lot of mana to use. But anyway, for that reason, and especially because there are so many skills on the Knight class, which are great to have with 99 points, these skills are really something which you should only be looking at once you've got tons of skill points on your class, and you're just looking at the extra things that you can get to kind of bring in and do other things with. So anyway, the first one to look at here is Sunder. This is the other one which you can use if you're using the Barbarian, what's it even called, the item? Insignia, isn't it? Insignia, there we go. So this skill is kind of like, in the way that Sever is like Cleave, Sunder is like Maim. The difference between Sunder and Maim, though, is that Sunder hits multiple targets. So it hits an area in front of you, which is actually kind of weird. I think it's the only skill like this that hits an area on where you're attacking in melee as opposed to around you. Most of these things, if they're melee and they hit an area, they hit a sort of a circle around you, whereas this hits a circle around the target you hit. But anyway, so this skill will hit a little area around in front of you where you're attacking, and it's also going to slow them and give them a damage over time. It's a very interesting skill, I think, and it's definitely worth noting how high the damage is. This extra damage over time is dealt 3 times, so that's roughly 450%, which you add on to the 1,550%, and well, this is doing 2,000% damage, which is nuts. That's crazily high. If you get Maim to 99 points, then it deals 1,200%, so it's definitely doing a lot more. The thing is that the cooldown here is 20 seconds, whereas if you get Maim to 99, the cooldown is 10 seconds. So it's not something you can spam, but it's going to do a lot of damage each time it hits. And unlike Maim, where you have to aim at a particular target, here you can actually hit a group of enemies. Now Skuruns, they haven't really done much with them so far. There's just one Skurun. It really depends. I don't know what direction they're going to take with these Skuruns, whether they're just going to slap on elemental damage or what. But even if they do just slap on elemental damage, if you pick a Skurun which is adding the element of your build, then you're going to be doing kind of nuts damage with this each time you hit it. I think also it's Sunder, how best to say, for PvP, Maim is one of those incredibly useful skills, because being able to do one big chunk of damage in one go, if you can stack up damage buffs like, with Enrage basically, then you can suddenly do a lot of damage to someone and they can't react to it, because they can't suddenly then apply defense buffs and tank your lots of little hits, because it's all coming in one big hit and it's all over before they can even react. So having a second Maim is actually very useful, because you can do one after the other and do tons of damage before they can really react to it. So that's where I see this being most useful. And also then PvE, in a case like this where there's lots of enemies, Maim is useless, but Sunder can take out a group of them. The area it hits is not very big, but it's big enough that it can take on a group. I need to get another cooldown potion, sorry for this. But yeah, so anyway, it's a really cool variant of Maim, and despite the longer cooldown, I think it has a lot of use for various things. Basically as a second Maim in PvP, or in PvE, it's better in some instances, and I wouldn't sort of use it instead of Maim, I think, just because the cooldown is longer. Having a lower cooldown on a big damage skill is kind of more important than having this, especially if you have Maim at say 10 out of 99, so the cooldown is just 5 seconds. comparing that to a 20-second cooldown skill, it's really hard to say that Sunder would be better. But, you know, if they bring out Screw-ins which do some crazy stuff, then perhaps it would be something which you'd use instead of Maim. But anyway, you can see a bit here what it does. It's pretty cool doing a big chunk, and you can see it's kind of weird with where it hits. It's definitely something you've got to practice and get used to. So that's this other skill. As you can see on the Barbarian, both these advanced skills are damage dealers, and they're variants of other skills. You can definitely do a lot more damage if you bring those in, and you know, you could do a build where you do all damage skills and you just do crazy stuff there. As long as you can tank in some way, you know, that's gonna be pretty cool. So now we get to the Royal Guard advanced skills. So this first one is Reflect. Now this one has a 10-second cooldown. Doesn't seem that low, but trust me, it's kind of weird. You can spam this quite frequently. What this does is not quite so obvious. So it's, even though it says Reflect, and I try and use these different terminology of Reflect and Counter. Now, what Reflect does is it actually does counter damage. It doesn't reflect the damage that you take. It does a counter hit each time you get hit. So for the next second, it only lasts 1 second. Anytime you take a hit, it will be as if you're doing a hit. You don't take any damage from it, and you do a hit back on them worth 250% of what you would normally do. So like, that's 2.5 times a basic attack you do as retaliation. So we're going to see here, it's easier to see on these archers. These are all attacking me here. When I use Reflect, I'm going to be going bang, 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 bang. And any time they hit me, I'm hitting them for 250% damage. So it only lasts 1 second, which seems very, very niche, but since it only has 10-second cooldown, you can see here with cooldown potion, you know, use it every 5 seconds or whatever, or 4 seconds, it's just over 4 seconds there. It gets pretty good. And otherwise, in PvP, this is just very surprising if you manage to catch. I mean, optimum is catching a wizard when they use something like Forest Bolts on you. And Forest Bolts is currently bugged, so it does double the number of hits. It does 20 hits of damage. Now, if you use Reflect, and they hit you with Forest Bolts, for one thing, it does no damage to you, but it does 20 hits of 250% back on them. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And this damage as well, I don't believe it triggers counters hits in returns, but I'd have to double check that. I'll write in the description if I check it before releasing this video. But anyway, with Scurrins, I actually don't have Aqua Reflect. But anyway, this Thorn Armor, what it does is just basically slaps on some elemental damage. Maybe they'll do some interesting things with this, but I really don't know. These Scurrins as well, the damage is not that big compared to the base damage. You can see 250% here. The elemental damage is just 25%, plus then, you know, the static damage. So we'll see what happens with Scurrins, but this skill definitely has a lot of potential, and in PvP certainly that's where you get hit most. In PvE, it's not really that good. I mean, maybe you can react to particular boss attacks. Say you're doing master maps. I've got master maps in mind because I did them quite recently. There are particular boss attacks which are sort of one-shots or whatever, and you can maybe learn to time this skill for when that attack's about to hit you, and then, you know, they're just going to they're not going to do any damage to you because you just completely nullified all the damage. So yeah, it's pretty cool there. Definitely has some use for that, and otherwise PvP is the main thing because people do so many hits that the retaliation damage is enormous, and when it's in like the second half of the match and everyone has cooldown on things, you can be spamming defense skills, and Reflect can be one of those skills that you're spamming, and so you'll also be able to do a lot of damage and retaliation while you're defending yourself. Also, interestingly, it can be used with the skill book that gives you 100% damage reduction for 1 second, and if you alternate between that and this, and then also, you know, got your defense skills in there, you can tank up in some kind of weird, kind of wacky ways that works kind of well. So anyway, the next skill to talk about is Royal Blade. This one is a basic attack buff. We talked about a few basic attack buffs on the class, and I didn't mention this one. Reason being, it's a little bit niche. It's, you know, it's on a particular advanced skill. You're gonna have 99 points in it, and even with all that, it's not very strong. So I'm obviously very biased because they haven't done stuff with Scurrins probably yet. They've only got one Scurrin in it. But the way this works is, for the next 5 seconds, your basic attacks have a chance to do extra damage and to heal you a small amount. Now this extra damage is absolutely pathetic. 15% is just like practically nothing. I mean, you know, you look at the 250% here, that's like way more than a 15%. I mean, sure, it's on basic attacks, you can be doing lots of basic attacks, but it's a chance of occurring. It's a 25% chance of occurring. Really what this is going to be doing most of all is healing you. 5% heal with a 25% on each attack. Say you have 4 attacks per second, that's a very kind of standard amount to be attacking in maps. PvP maybe a little bit slower, but you can be healing by 5% each second. Now 5% each second isn't terribly good, but it is definitely useful. Yeah, the only thing is, I would say on Knight you have a lot better defense skills and stuff going on that you don't really need to add this in. Better to go with the stronger defense skills and then the damage skills as the other skills, you know, out of the 10 on your hotbar. Now, as you can tell, I'm very biased against this. I don't like this skill. I was actually involved with the design of some of these advanced skills, and I gave a lot of input and redesigned some of them and all that kind of stuff. And when they came out with this, I completely overhauled it and gave a really good spin on it that I thought would be really good. And they didn't do that. They did the really bad version of it. And I thought, okay, maybe they're going to do this and they're going to add screw-ins which then make it really good. But unfortunately, this first screw-in, all it does is it adds some shadow damage onto the attacks. So it's making it do a little bit more damage. But yeah, it's really not doing a lot, this skill right now. One of the things I really have against it as well is it's got 5-second duration and a 20-second cooldown, which means you can't even have it on all the time. Like, compared to other basic attack buffs, like for example the dual wield, which you just put a second sword in and then it's like automatic constant buff. This is not that at all. Even if you have a cooldown potion active, you can't have it active constantly, and you've got to be using this skill. I mean, actually, does it have an animation? I'm going to have to remind myself here. Yeah, it does have a little animation. It's a short animation, and to be fair, the sword buff does look pretty damn cool, but it's not really going to be doing that much at all. So yeah, can you even see the damage on this? Oh, you can see some shadow damage coming out. But anyway, that's what this skill does. Like I said, if there's screw-ins that come out for this, which either redesign it or just power it up massively, then this definitely has potential as a lovely kind of defensive and offensive buff. I think that's what they're going for here, because it is the Royal Guard, which is meant to be more tanky version of the class, and this gives you the healing but also gives a little bit of damage output as well, and that's what they like to do with defense skills, is do focus on defense but then also a bit of damage coming out from it. So that's this skill, that's those 3 skills. Just to summarize again, Sunder is like an alternative to Maim. It's very powerful, it's a little bit more powerful than Maim, but the cooldown's a lot more, and then it hits in an area in front of you. So it has its uses, and I think where it works best is like using it as a second Maim for PvP, because then you have these 2 big heavy hitters to suddenly take off chunks of the enemy health. Next we have Reflect, which is a very interesting and powerful skill to make you invincible for 1 second and retaliate with damage. That is counter hits. It's not dealing back the damage which you take, it's instead doing a hit on anything which hits you, on any enemy or person that hits you during that second. Very good if you can time it right for avoiding one-shot attacks from bosses or particular attacks from other people in PvP. Otherwise, great to just throw out there to get some damage output while you're also making yourself a lot tankier. You spam this with other defense skills and your damage skills, and yeah, it just makes everything kind of work quite nicely. And then we have Royal Blade, which unfortunately is just useless. So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and next one is going to be a really long presentation. So if you're up for that, then go get stuck in. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.